Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hearing from the Bhagavad-Gita as it is, chapter 3, entitled Karma Yoga, text 32. 32. Ye tvetad abhyasuyanto nanutishtanti me matam savagyana vimudam stan vidinastan achetasaha. Yea, those, two, however, etat, this, abhyasuyanta, out of envy, na, do not, anutishtanti, regularly perform, me, my, matam, injunction, sarvagyana, in all sorts of knowledge, vimudan, perfectly befooled, tan, they are, vidi, know it well, nashtan, all ruined, achetasaha, without Krishna consciousness. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. But those who out of envy disregard these teachings and do not follow them regularly are to be considered bereft of all knowledge, befooled and ruined in their endeavors for perfection. Please repeat. But those who out of envy disregard these teachings and do not follow them regularly are to be considered bereft of all knowledge, befooled and ruined in their endeavors for perfection. Purport. The flaw of not being Krishna conscious is clearly stated herein. As there is punishment for disobedience to the order of the Supreme Executive Head, so there is certainly punishment for disobedience to the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A disobedient person, however great he may be, is ignorant of his own self and of the Supreme Brahman, Paramatma, and the Personality of Godhead, due to a vacant heart. Therefore, there is no hope of perfection of life for him. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gananjana Shlakaya Chakshu Anmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Hare Krishna. This verse clearly describes demoniac mentality. Those who out of envy disregard these teachings. This is clearly described. How it is the demons, why it is the demons are envious is described in the 16th chapter, 18th verse. I shall read the translation. Bewildered by false ego, strength, pride, lust and anger, the demons become envious of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is situated in their own bodies and in the bodies of others, and blaspheme against the real religion. This clearly describes, it gives a little more information. So the demons are bewildered by false ego, which of course is forcing them to enjoy the material world and lord it over the material world. Strength, pride, of course they become proud, and they are full of lust and anger. Yes, this is caused by his so-called prestige and his accumulation of wealth and strength. He does not know that the present life is a preparation for the next life. Not knowing this, he is actually envious of his own self as well as of others. So that's the demoniac mentality. And devotees, of course, are abiding strictly by the scriptural injunctions. There are 3 types of evidence, pramana. There is first pratyaksha, which is the evidence of our senses. With our knowledge acquiring senses, we see so many things, we hear so many things, we taste so many things, and acquire knowledge in that way. But that is not acceptable really, because our senses are imperfect, if only for the fact that there is the propensity to cheat. Then there is anumana, which is hypothesis. We observe that things may be like this, so we may hypothesize that the truth is this. Science is mainly based upon hypothesis. Scientists make a hypothesis and they observe phenomena in the material world, and they form hypothesis and then try to prove that it is true. That is anumana. And the other one is shabda, which is sound vibration. Shabda pramana, the evidence of transcendental sound coming from spiritual world. That is the evidence that we accept. And there are 2 aspects to that. There is the shruti and there is smriti. The shruti is that evidence spoken by Krishna himself. All the Vedas are shruti. They emanate from the breathing of Lord Narayan. The Bhagavad-Gita spoken by Krishna is shruti, but it's also smriti because it's included in the Mahabharata. So the smriti is a further explanation of the shruti. Things that are not clearly explained in the shruti are made clear in the smriti. And they are, the shruti and the smriti are considered to be the 2 eyes of the Brahmana. And if he has only shruti, then he is half blind. If he has neither shruti or smriti, then he is completely blind. But the devotee who is completely committed to Bhagavat Dharma can run in the dark and not stumble. So the sages of yore always accepted the shruti and the smriti, and we must back up all our statements by evidence from those 2 things. If we don't, then we don't accept. If you cannot back up your statements according to the shruti and smriti, then we do not accept. Otherwise we accept without question. We may not fully understand because of avishuddha buddhi, because of imperfect intelligence, but we should not argue, because the shruti does not have any ambiguities. There are no ambiguities in the shruti. There are no contradictions. It is only from imperfect intelligence that we perceive that there are differences. But there are no distinctions, and so if we argue about these things, then it only creates further misunderstandings and increases the contradictions. So it is better to accept and understand that when we are better qualified and more purified, that we will understand these things perfectly. So our Krishna consciousness movement, Srila Prabhupada's movement, is going on the basis of Shruti and Smriti. And as far as it has followed that, then it has been effective. And to the degree that we're not effective is because we are not following these scriptural injunctions. It's a very, very simple matter. So the demons, they are not following the scriptures. They are inimical to the scriptures, as we heard in these verses. So they are acting manodharma. They're acting on the mental platform. They create their own religion. They create their own activities out of imagination, and in that way become bewildered. But simultaneously thinking they are Iswaraham Aham Bhogi. I am the Lord, and I am all powerful. So there are so many examples in the scriptures of demoniac persons, and of course the original demoniac person was Hiranyaksha, who was born from Diti. Now he was born with Hiranyakashipu, the two were born. They were conceived together. Hiranyakashipu was conceived first, but they came out in reversed order. That's how it happens. They came out in reversed order. So actually Hiranyakashipu was the elder brother and Hiranyaksha was the younger brother. And at the time they were born, there were disturbances all over the universe. There was darkness for once. For one thing, there was darkness. And because of that darkness, the demigods couldn't perform their duties. So they went to Lord Brahma to find out what had happened. And Lord Brahma, of course, described how it was that Jai and Vijay in Vaikuntha had been cursed by the Kumaras because for stopping them entering Vaikuntha. So Jai and Vijay had been cursed to take 3 births as demons. And this was an arrangement by the Supreme Lord, because Krishna has the fighting spirit, just like in the material world there's fighting spirit. There must be fighting spirit in Krishna also, in the spiritual world. So Krishna likes to fight. So when Jai and Vijay fell, they fell into the womb of Diti, and at that time there was darkness, and the demigods went to find out. And Lord Brahma explained the situation. So after they were born, and that was after Diti had kept them in her womb for how long? 100 years. 100 years, because she'd heard from her husband Kashyapa what the situation was. Because she was lusty for children at an improper time, therefore the conception was cursed. There was disrespect to the demigods, there was disrespect of her husband's wishes, there was disrespect of the time of day, and for that reason Kashyapa told her that she would be giving birth to demons who would be a cause of disturbance for the whole universe, who would torture innocent people, kill innocent people, and cause so much disturbance in the universe. But he told her, because of your repentance and because of your faith in Krishna, that the daughter, the son of one of your sons will be a devotee, Prahlad Maharaj, and your sons will be killed by Krishna. So when she heard that, she was actually pleased that they were going to be killed by Krishna, and that Prahlad would be born. So when they were born, they grew very fast, and they had steel-like frames, and it seemed like the tips of their helmets reached up to the sky, and wherever they walked, they blocked out the sun from all directions. So they must have been very big characters. And of course Hiranyaksha, was being the younger brother, he always wanted to please Hiranyakashipu, so he took up a club and traveled all over the universe, creating a disturbance in a fighting spirit. He had physical and mental strength, very strong, and he was very proud because he had a benediction and he felt himself invincible. So he went all over the universe, and he went into the ocean, and it says for many years he was in the ocean causing disturbance for all the aquatics. And then he went to the capital of Varuna, Vibhavari, and requested combat with him, but Varuna said, no, I'm an old man, I can't. I'm too old to fight with you. The best combatant for you will be Lord Vishnu. So Narada Muni told him where Lord Vishnu was. So he got himself to the Garbhodaksha ocean, and there he met who? Garbhodak ocean? He met Lord Bor. Lord Bor was in the process of rescuing the earth because of demoniac activities exploiting the earth. The earth had fallen into the Garbhodak ocean, and Lord Bor had incarnated to lift the earth out of the Garbhodak ocean. And so Hiranyaksha approached Lord Bor and wanted to fight. So first of all, Lord Bor, he lifted up the earth and floated it on the ocean, and then took up combat. And Hiranyaksha thought, of course, he was going to be able to kill him, because that's the demoniac mentality. We do hear that actually some demons, they actually followed Vedic principles. That's a bit of an anomaly. We heard that actually Jarasandh followed Vedic principles. In fact, he worshipped Lord Vishnu, and he was very charitable to the Brahmanas. Whatever the Brahmanas wanted, he would give them. But in the sense he was demoniac was because he was envious of Krishna. He actually tried to kill Krishna. But when Krishna and Bhima and Arjuna went to him, they wanted to get rid of him, so they went disguised as Brahmanas to pick a fight with him, and he agreed to give them whatever they wanted, even to the point of giving his own body. That was Jarasandh, because he was thinking in terms of Bali Maharaj's activities. Like Bali Maharaj, he gave everything to Vamanadev and became a Mahajan because of that. So Jarasandh was thinking, if I do that, I'll become immortal also. I'll become because it suited his purposes, he was willing to do that. But ultimately he wanted to kill Krishna. So Lord Bor, of course, he played with Hiranyaksha because that's Krishna's pastime. That's Krishna's enjoyment. For his pleasure he was doing that. And for his pleasure, the Jai and Vijay were taking the part of those demons. So after a bit of a tussle, eventually Lord Bor, he just flicked Hiranyaksha behind the ear with his forefoot, and that was the end of Hiranyaksha. His eyes bulged out of his head, his legs and arms were broken, and he fell down dead. So that was the end of him. So he was the original demon, and of course there's been no demons quite of that stature since. But we have a demon of a lesser status in Vena. Vena was more, according to the description that we've been hearing here, against religious principles, because Vena was born the son of King Anga. Now King Anga was a Rajarshi, very good Rajarshi, devotee of Krishna. His citizens were very happy. They loved him. They had everything, all the necessities of life were supplied in abundance during his reign. But his wife, Suniti, was the daughter of death personified. And as a result of that, well, initially King Anga could not beget sons. He didn't know why, he performed an Ashvamedha sacrifice to get a son, but the demigods were not accepting his oblations, and he didn't know why. So he asked the priests, and they discovered that it was because he'd been sinful in his previous life. So then they arranged another sacrifice directly for Lord Vishnu, and out of that sacrifice, as soon as the oblation was made, a figure came out of the fire wearing a white dress and wearing a golden garland and carrying a golden pot filled with sweet rice, which was given to King Anga's wife, and then in time she gave birth to Vena. And Vena was very bad. Even as a child, he killed his friends, mercilessly murdered his friends. And so King Anga, because he had a bad son, he was very disturbed. Because if you have a bad son, it's like having a bad eye. You can't see anything with it, but it just gives you a lot of pain. But then he was thinking, having a bad son is good, because it will be the cause of my detachment from family life. And that he did. In the middle of the night, he got up, he didn't tell his ministers or anybody, and went to the forest. And no one could find him. They didn't know where he was, and the whole of the citizens were looking for him all over the place. No one could find him. So without a head, then the Brahmanas thought, well, we've got to have some leaders. So they installed Vena as the king. And immediately he became king. He became puffed up with the eight opulences. He became completely puffed up with his power. And he got on his chariot and went about making the earth and the sky tremble and stopping all religious functions. He stopped all the functions that the Brahmanas were performing, all their sacrifices. So he caused a terrible misery for all the religious people. And as a result of this, the Brahmanas decided they would try and reason with him, because this was totally unacceptable. So they told him that he shouldn't do that. He should allow the Brahmanas to perform sacrifices to please the demigods, and by that the king will be benefited. They gave him all good reasons, but he refused. His argument was that the demigods are part of the body of the Supreme Lord, and I am the king, therefore I am supreme, and that you must offer your oblations to me. And when he said that, he made those arguments, the Brahmanas said, kill him, kill him. So that was the end of Vena. But he exemplified very, very clearly the demoniac mentality. So devotees are following the Shastra, and we want to become, as Krishna told Arjuna, just become nimitta matram. Just become an instrument in my service. That is what our desire should be, just like Ramananda Roy said to Lord Chaitanya, I am just like a puppet on strings. You are pulling the strings. Whatever you say, I will do. I will dance. Make me dance. And, Prabhupada said the same, expressed the same sentiments when he was coming to America. When he arrived at Boston in the Jaladuta, he also expressed the same sentiments, that he saw how America was, and he thought, why have you brought me here? How are these people possibly going to give up sex life and follow the regulative principles? So he expressed, make me dance, as you wish, make me dance. So that is the desire of the devotees. Our ultimate desire should be, Krishna, I want to dance according to your tune. This is oneness with Krishna. It means to fulfill Krishna's desires and not our own desires. So the beginning of this is, of course, to follow the Shruti and the Smriti. The self-realized soul, as we've been hearing for so many verses, has no reason to perform any duty. Because why? Because he's illuminated. His duty is illuminated from within. Jitatmana prasantasya paramatma samahita sisokta sukha dukeshu tatamana pamanayon. For one who has controlled the mind, the super soul is already reached. For him, happiness and distress, honor and dishonor, heat and cold are all the same. He has achieved tranquility. So that is our position. We should, as devotees, be purified by purifying our senses, controlling our mind. Then we will be automatically receiving instructions from Krishna. The Dhammi Buddhi Yogam Tam, Krishna says, I give them the knowledge by which they can come to me. So Krishna will give us the knowledge by which we can go to him. There will be no contradictions or ambiguities in that knowledge. It will be clear and conclusive. There will be no cause for endless arguments and inconclusive discussions. So it's necessary to be a little patient in spiritual life, especially if we are struggling with anatta nivritti, to be a little patient, and that to accept that in course of time I will understand these things more clearly. So Krishna told Arjuna there are two types of living entities. There is the demon and the divine, demoniac and the divine. Modern day progressives don't accept that. They say their belief is that human beings are basically good. This is their great fallacy. Whereas religionists have the opposite view. In Christianity, Christians know that man is born into sin. Adam ate the apple, did he not? We're born into sin. But the progressive, modern, irreligious people, they accept that human beings are basically good. It's inconceivable they can come to that conclusion when you study history, but they do believe that. So therefore they think, you just society, then everybody can do what they want, will be free, and no one will be, nothing is sinful. You just do what you want, as long as you don't interfere with someone else. That's the modern idea. But we don't subscribe to that because we accept the Vedas as being the standards of human etiquette. And if you don't follow those, that is the distinction between the demon and the divine. The divine person follows the Vedic instructions, the demon does not. Very clear distinction. Hare Krishna. Do you have any questions, please? I welcome them. Yes. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much. Will you ever just related to this first times that you wrote, this Hiranyaksha, when we hear the stories, it's very difficult to environment, rain, or how this earth fell down.
Yes. Yeah, we hear it, but we don't really participate in it. I agree, because it's too fantastic somehow, because we're like frogs in a well. In that sense, do you mean? No.
Which means like, let us say, I'm just imagining, like the first principle, one should not tell the stories to the very new person in Krishna consciousness.
Oh.
And let us say somebody here and he asks, nobody I had, let us say they are watching on TV,
Yes.
this going on, and they ask from us, you are from Hare Krishna, and I had this pastime of this Leela
Yes.
of Krishna, this earth fell down in the ocean, and then your God took the form of gold,
Yes.
this demon, and as you said, the demon was so high,
Yes.
it doesn't fit in the brain.
No.
So how to, like, first of all, we should have that complete faith on this thing. Even if it does not fit in our brain, at least in my brain, it doesn't fit sometimes. All this earth fell down, where is the Bhagavad-Gita, that ocean and all earth is fall down, and how it came out and again it was in So, how will you...
Well, the Bhagavad-Gita is addressed to the intelligence, and the Bhagavad-Gita makes clear of Krishna's supremacy and power. His demonstration of the universal form. You know, everything is a demonstration of Krishna's power, and that's in the Bhagavad-Gita, that's described. So first of all, in spiritual life, Shrishti Tattva, the Acharyas recommend Shrishti Tattva to understand first the material world and the process of nescience. To understand that, and I mean, we hear that Mahavishnu lies within the causal ocean, and from the pores of his skin come innumerable universes. So that's, from him come in millions, billions of suns. So that's inconceivable. So first we have to understand Krishna's greatness. But then when we understand that, as Krishna says in the Gita, if you understand this power of mine, then you'll surrender. You'll surrender to me. But first, understand how great Krishna is. It's very important to understand that first. Before, for instance, now we're doing the 10th canto, first we should really understand and accept how inconceivably powerful Krishna is. Otherwise, we'll just take the 10th canto as like mundane sex life or something like that. Hare Krishna.
Who has given the example of Inakasmur, demon?
Who?
Inakasmur demon, you are taking the example of.
Yeah.
Just now I was speaking about Inakasmur.
Hiranyaksha.
So Lord took as a poor incarnation. So we see in this material world also, we find so many demons in the form of devotee or general outsiders also we see.
Devotee?
Yeah, devotee also. Devotee also.
Demoniac.
Yeah, sometimes they act like a demonic.
And what? I haven't witnessed any demoniac activities performed by devotees. What would be an example?
Just like when devotee they are fighting, what is their mood? What is their mood? They are demonic mood. That's why they are fighting.
Well, they're fighting because we argue because we're Kanishta-adhikaris. We don't have our knowledge isn't established, and our faith isn't established well enough. Our knowledge of the scriptures is not established well enough. That's why we fight. It's not because we become demoniac.
The act which we perform, now I want to box you. So that the act which I'm performing, that act is not spiritual.
But this is the hypothetical situation. I don't really believe you want to box anybody.
No, there are some cases. They just have your fight.
Well,
Your fight.
I was punched once by a devotee. He caught me on the head and really pummeled me. But I deserved it. And I was shouting, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. He was, because I was a treasurer, I was a real mean treasurer, and I gave them all a hard time. And they got angry with me. And one devotee did that. I took it as Krishna's mercy, but I really frustrated him. But he had a fighting spirit, but he was a devotee.
But anger is the mood, which is the mood of anger. Ignorance or
Yes, well, oh no, anger shouldn't. It's not. Prabhupada said it's not correct to think that a devotee should not be angry, but his anger is not like anger in the mode of tamagun, where you lose control of your senses. It's not that anger at all. If you lose control, that means you're definitely in the modes of material nature, because it's a great offense to physically attack a devotee. I mean, when I joined, devotees would fight. We had fights occasionally. And even sannyasis would get frustrated. Nowadays, because we've watered down the philosophy, yeah, it's more easy come, easy go nowadays. But in the old days, even sometimes the gurus would appear to be a little frustrated and annoyed. But now you don't see any of that.
And still we see that how the demonic nature comes to people.
Yes, well, this is the Kali Yuga. We were in the Kali Yuga. Demon and divine are in the same person, aren't they? So we're having to fight those demoniac propensities in us. Especially desire for wealth. We're hearing the desire for wealth. They never have enough wealth, the demons. That you see in the modern day, like this man, Bezos, is it? Amazon, he's going to be the first trillionaire. He'll never have enough wealth. They never stop. So Chintama Parimamcha, they have unlimited anxieties to the point of death.
And also how the cheating tendency comes to the devotee sometimes.
Well, we've been cheating for millions of births, so that propensity might be still there. But we understand, according to knowledge, that duplicity is against Vaishnava principles. So we try not to be. It's very important to be straightforward in your dealings and not be neglectful in your dealings with individuals. Any dealings, we should not be neglectful.
Okay, thank you.
Hare Krishna.
You just mentioned that philosophy is not right.
Yes.
What does it mean?
Well, I noticed frequently the devotees are not want to speak the truth anymore because they soften it so as not to disturb anybody or not to save themselves coming under criticism. Well, I heard, I'll give you an example. I heard recently a devotee said that we're all in the modes of passion and ignorance. We're all in the mode of passion and ignorance, devotees. Now, I may have misheard that, but I did question it because if that's true, the consequences of that are far-reaching. It means Prabhupada's movement is finished. If that's true, when we no longer have any transcendental relationship with Krishna. So I asked that question, and the reply was, well, we can become purified. There was no conclusion to be drawn from it, how bad that would be. That means there'd be no qualified brahmanas in our society. That means, practically speaking, no one would be understanding Krishna, because in the passion and ignorance you can't understand Krishna. At the best we would have theoretical knowledge. At the best, no application of that knowledge at all. So For me, that was watering down to say, oh, we can become purified. We know we can become purified. As bell metal is turned to gold, isn't it? By the action of the spiritual master, by the guru. Guru can bring the lowest, someone from the tamagun, and can purify them. We know that. That's a fact. So also, in many respects, devotees will not talk about certain subjects, like to do with feminism, for instance, because so many devotees are now very sensitive, especially in America. You speak about feminism. You know, the Manu Smriti makes it very clear that ladies have to be protected at all stages of their life, right? It's very hard for women in the West to accept that fact because they want equality. Materially speaking, they want to make equality. So maybe we won't preach about that anymore. But that's very bad, because this is one of the worst influences in modern society that we should be fighting. This idea. Also, homosexuality is abominable. I mean, illicit sex is abominable, even within marriage. So, yes.
Yes, some gurus are not allowed in certain temples.
Oh, yes.
Because they don't soften the preaching.
Yes, that's a fact.
Right?
That's happening.
If you want to have some place to preach, then you might want to consider these things. That's just a fact.
Consider what?
Consider maybe not speaking so straightforwardly. I remember I gave a class, this little sample, at a nice temple. The temple president's wonderful. But later he said, I appreciate your class, but I just want to give you some feedback.
Yeah, right.
The 3 people that joined the temple, 2 of them left, and 1 of them stayed. And the one that stayed said, now I see why you guys are called a cult. I mean, I thought I gave one of these great classes. I mean, it was nothing weird. It was just like maybe more for brahmacharis and traveling Sankirtan here, as opposed to super sensitive America.
So the question is?
So that's just the point, that I don't think I'm going to be invited to give class there again.
No.
So I have to adjust.
Right.
So that you have an audience. You might be probably be more effective. I mean, it's up to you. You be more effective having an audience, or having an audience at all, and just speaking totally straight up. Just how it works, at least in America.
Well, it's important that we speak the truth. The criteria should be that we're speaking the truth, not that we disturb somebody. The criteria has become, I know from personal experience, is that you've said something that disturbs somebody. So if you're in a society that's in the lower modes, you're going to disturb somebody, whatever you say. But the criteria should be, of course we don't unnecessarily go out of our way, but sometimes we have to speak to the point. We should speak to the point. And that will require certain truths. So we should not be afraid to speak those truths. We want to sort out, yes. If we want to purify our institution, the only way is to preach the truth. If the temples become empty, so what? We keep speaking the truth, and then we will fill up with more sincere devotees.
You might not. The temple presidents sometimes say you cannot come to this place.
Yes, they may say that. Well then you want to get out of that place and find some place where you can speak the truth. That's pretty clear.
Some gurus are not.
I think Vrindavan is pretty nice. I don't see any censorship here. I mean, pretty much devotees can give lectures and say all kinds of things, and I don't see any censorship here. But that doesn't mean to say if incorrect philosophy is being spoken that it shouldn't be corrected. There is not sufficient interest in Bhagavad-Gita anymore. Devotees are not. I always explain the old days, after Guru Puja and greeting the deities, there would be a big kirtan in New York, and we were not allowed to leave. They would sometimes, I remember sannyasis standing at the door and present stopping you leaving. But after that arti, everybody would sit down immediately, and they'd be waiting for class. They'd be waiting for the speaker before the speaker came. They were so eager to hear the philosophy, and if you were in the kitchen, you made any noise, they'd pounce on you because everybody wanted to hear every word. Well, we were saving the world in those days.
How about the gym class? Was there a lot of people in the gym class?
Well, there weren't so many in the evening, but there were evening classes, and mostly the brahmacharis would go. But the morning class, there'd be sometimes 3 drums at the back playing, 3 drums, big. Ecstasy, you want to get up and dance, Jaya Ram, you want to get up and dance. It was so enthusiastic. The enthusiasm was so good, infectious. But we were saving the world in those days. We're not exactly focused on that anymore. We're more or less focused on maintaining the temples. Hare Krishna. Thank you. All glory to Srila Prabhupada.